Good afternoon, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm just going to make one really quick announcement. So if you have not noticed on the UT Southwestern careers page or on LinkedIn, or if you're on Primer, we do have some jobs open within the office, some regulatory analyst jobs. And so if anybody is interested, we would highly encourage you to reach out to myself, to Chuck, to Rhonda, just to kind of indicate that you might be interested. We've got a couple other positions that are going to be posted sooner than later within the monitoring team. So if you have any interest in joining the HRPP, please let us know. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kelly Benton. I'm in the HRPPO office in the Quality Assurance and Monitoring team, and it truly is a team now, so I want to introduce my teammates. First, Scott St. Martin, stand up. Y'all probably know Scott or hear Scott. Talk to Scott. Kim Mapes, and Amber Hicks. So if you're trying to call me or email me and you can't get me, please feel free to call someone else from the team. So I talk really fast. I have a lot of information in my slides, and I do not read my slides. So what I'm going to do is give you a gist of what I want you to know, and then you can read the slides when you're having trouble falling asleep, and then you can digest the information at that point. So that's where we are. So this is the end of the summer how-to series, and I'm presenting on reportable events. Today, we're only going to focus on deviations and UPERSOs. Those seem to be the more problematic ones. We're going to talk about how do you assess an event, how do you complete the RE Smart Form in EIRB. I'll have some summaries, tips, reminders, and resources at the end. So I always start with this slide. Remember, investigators and study teams, you're responsible for knowing all of your reporting requirements for all of your studies, and they're all different. Every sponsor has different reporting requirements. External IRB's reporting requirements are different than ours. You have to be aware of that. The best way to probably do that is to have some sort of checklist. You know, okay, this study is under WIRB, but I have to report local events to the UT Southwestern HRPP, things like that. The IRB approves your study when you submit it in EIRB and you get an approval letter. They have approved it exactly as you have specified in that SMART form, in your protocols, in your informed consent. So anytime that there's a change, the IRB needs to know about it. Sometimes we need to know about it right away, and sometimes we can find out about it at CR, okay? So how do you prevent protocol deviations and REs is by following the protocol exactly as written. If you don't know before you do something or you fail to do something, ask the PI, ask your sponsor or your monitor, call the HRPP IRB office, and most importantly is keep them with you and use checklists. It's crucial. I wouldn't be able to do my job without checklists and reminders. There's just no way. There's so much to remember. And I'm sure y'all are all the same way. So let's talk about deviations and UPERSOs. First, deviations. What are deviations? It's basically a change to IRB-approved research. That's really all it is. It's also called non-compliance, violation, departure from protocol. Before EIRB Lite, it said violation. And study coordinators would not check the violation box. They always check the other box. And I would call them, and they'd be like, no, it's not a violation. It's only a deviation. So when we developed EIRB Lite, we tried to use a less threatening word, and we call it departure from protocol. It's really all non-compliance. Some are more serious than others. That's just the bottom line. You know that we're all going to be going to single IRBs coming up, and that's going to be a lot more frequent. So there have been talks about IRBs kind of getting together and harmonizing their definitions. So that you may see changes to this. We may end up calling it non-compliance, okay? If you have any questions about what is serious non-compliance or continuing non-compliance, it's in our HRPP policy and procedure manual on our website. So deviations are caused by commission. That means you do something incorrectly or not as required, or omission. You forget to do something. You forget to draw a lab result. You need to document, assess, track, and report them all to the IRB. Here at UT Southwestern, we've categorized deviations as emergency, major, and minor. Minor deviations are summarized and reported at continuing review. Don't attach a spreadsheet of 250 deviations at CR. The IRB board will freak out. So don't do that. Summarize it. So we've had 30 subjects that had out-of-window visits. However, it didn't cause a UPERSO. Things like that. Summarize. So an emergency deviation is when you need to make a change to protect the subject's safety and welfare. This is when the regulations say not only should you, but you're allowed to make changes prior to IRB approval. So you always want to do what is the best interest of the subject, whether you violate the protocol or not. So this might mean withholding study drug or administering a contraindicated medication that they're not supposed to have on study to protect their physical well-being. That is allowed. However, those do need to be reported to the HRPP or IRB, depending on which one you're under, within 5 working days of occurrence. So if that happens, again, you have 5 days and you check the emergency deviation box in section 1.0 of the SMART form. Major deviations. When you think of the word major, you're thinking of crucial, essential, important. These are crucial to the study, crucial to the subject's safety, crucial to their rights. So it does mean that it negatively affects subjects or others' rights, welfare, and safety. And it also includes potential harm. So if you administer 100 milligrams of a drug that should have only been 10 milligrams and the subject wasn't harmed, that's still a departure from protocol. That's major. That's something that you would want to report, even though nothing happened to the subject. And then when we talk about scientific integrity, we're not saying that, okay, I forgot to draw blood for an AST at this visit, we've got to throw the whole subject out, we can't use their data. That's not what we're looking for here. We're looking for, we enrolled the subject, found out 6 weeks later they were never eligible, and we have to remove them from the study, so you've put them at risk, you can't use their data. It's major types of scientific integrity. If you find falsified data or you can't back up the data in your CRFs with source documentation, that's kind of what we're looking at. You report major deviations promptly to the IRB within 5 days. You will choose departure from protocol, not other, in section 1.0 of the SMART form. If you do, we'll have you change it. So let's just do it right in the beginning. So when we say departure from protocol, people think, well, I didn't violate the protocol, it was in the SMART form. Or it's just a regulation. A protocol is a way of doing things. It's not just this physical document. It's a system and how we do research. So keep that in mind. UPERSOs, this seems to cause a lot of questions and confusion. So this means something has happened, and sometimes it is a deviation, but it could also be a UPERSO. So something happens, and I like to use adverse events, serious adverse events for this example, but there are non-adverse event UPERSOs as well. So let's just talk about an adverse event. So something happens. You've been notified of a new risk through a Dear Investigator letter. And you have to ask yourself, is this new? Is it unexpected? That's the first question. And that means nature, is it ever been reported? The frequency and the severity. Is it as we have explained, mostly in the informed consent document? And you also look at, is this something that you expect in this population? If you have a study of teenagers in an acne study and they're dying, you don't expect that. But if you have a late-stage cancer study and there are deaths, that's expected. So you have to look at that based on your study. The next question you want to ask, is it probably or definitely related to the research, either the procedures, the study drugs, something about their participation? We say probably because that means you have more evidence for than against. It's more likely than not, it's over 50% chance. Possibly anything is possible. It really is. So possibly means we don't know. We don't have enough information right now. Maybe, maybe not. We want to know about it when it's probably or definitely related to the research. And the third part, Does this event or whatever happened place this subject, other subjects, or others at risk of harm than was previously known and that you had reported to the IRB in the SMART form in the protocol? This is something new. New information. Fortunately, most adverse events and serious adverse events are not UPERSOs because they are expected. So an event must meet all 3 UPERSO criteria to be a UPERSO. Not 1, not 2, all 3. Anytime you have a UPERSO, there is going to be some sort of corrective action. You're not going to say, okay, we know about this risk, but shh, don't tell them. It's never going to happen. Even if you lost someone's folder and it had all their private information in there, you still have to tell them. So that's a corrective action. So think of it like that. There's going to be some sort of action taken to correct it or prevent whatever happened from happening again. If the sponsor says we're not making any changes at this time, it's not a UPERSO. And again, not all UPERSOs are adverse events. There's breaches. What if you found out one of your nurses has been working under a revoked license because they've done something? That's serious, and we need to know about that. That would be a non-adverse event UPERSO. Okay, so a lot of people want to know what unexpected means. So I'll take you through each of the 3 criteria for UPERSOs. So it is not expected in the population being studied or the subject's underlying condition. So I use that example. We have a 20-year-old subject in the acne study. He has a seizure or stroke. He has no history of that. He's done nothing that we know about at this point to cause him to have a stroke. You don't expect it in 20-year-olds. You don't expect it in an acne study. So that would say, this seems unexpected. But you still don't know, is it probably or definitely related at this point? You don't know, does the research suggest that there's an increased risk of harm? We don't know. You have determined this is unexpected. Or 2, it's not included or it's not accurate in the research documents, the informed consent document, the investigator's brochure, the protocol. So sometimes they will list a laundry list of everything that could possibly ever happen to you on the study. You hear it all the time on television commercials. Headache, nausea, your head might fall off, gangrene of the vaginal area. I mean, it's like crazy. And we have had that, Scott can attest, we have had that as an UPERSO, gangrene of the vaginal area. So that was scary. That would be something I would definitely want to know about and have a consent for, okay? So if things are just listed as a laundry list of possibilities, but then you find out we know this is caused by this drug or this device or this procedure, that's going to move up. So again, you've been in the possible category, but now we know it is probably, that's when it's elevated, okay? Or the event is more severe or happening more frequently than expected. So let's say 10% of the subjects in all of the studies and all the research that this pharmaceutical company has done develop a rash. But in this study, being done at UT Southwestern, Duke, wherever, you're seeing about 25%. That's an increase in frequency. That would be something that you would want to report. And then if it's more severe, so some studies, especially chemo studies, you might be dizzy, and you're expecting that. But if you're so dizzy that you're being hospitalized, you're vomiting, you can't work, that's much more severe than dizzy. That goes beyond that. Are there any questions about unexpected? And again, just because I'm in a study and I know dizziness is one of, let's just say it's one of the events, or it's not one of the events. I could be dizzy for a lot of other reasons. So we don't know yet, is it even related to the research? I might be getting the flu, someone else might be pregnant. You never know, there's other reasons for why you feel the way you do sometimes. So, what does probably related mean? There is a reasonable likelihood based on evidence that the event is caused by something in the research. Okay, you have more evidence for it than against, more likely than not, over 50% chance. And again, possibly, we don't know. It could be. We don't know. We don't know what's going on right now. This happens a lot when one thing has happened to one subject in the world on a particular drug. We don't really know yet. That's why we wouldn't want to know about it at this point. And what suggests the research places subjects or others at an increased risk of harm than was previously known or recognized. All that's saying is that the risk associated with the research have changed. That's all you're saying. Research. So sometimes I might experience dizziness and it's severe and we know it's caused by the study, and I want to get out because I can't take it. That doesn't mean then the research is more risky. We already knew about that, but this one particular person doesn't want to deal with a particular side effect. In the regulations, we are required to tell subjects of new findings throughout the research. That is a regulation. So anytime you have new risks, new events, and they are EUPERSOs, you need to notify subjects. Events that are not EUPERSOs, if the risk in the informed consent are accurately and completely described in the protocol informed consent document, which means the nature, severity, frequency is as it's expected, the relationship to the drug device procedure is expected, that's not a EUPERSO. Events that are possibly or not related, don't report it until it becomes probably related. A lot of people will call and say, I have a monitoring report, do I need to submit it? I have a DSMB report, do I need to submit it? I have a 483, do I need to submit the report? It's not the report that we're looking for. We're looking for, is there a EUPERSO in that report? Is there noncompliance in that report? You would report the event. You can attach the DSMB report or the 483 in section 19.2, but you're describing an event, EUPERSO or deviation noncompliance in there. And studies that are stopped due to futility. So a lot of times they'll have a placebo-controlled study and they're saying, look, we're not seeing any differences between the group. We're just going to go ahead and stop the study. You don't have to report that as a EUPERSO. That's kind of what studies are looking at. They compare different procedures to each other, different drugs, placebo, to see, is this working? And if it's not, then they stop that. Also, I've mentioned earlier, one event happens to one subject one time in the world. This happens a lot in your SUSAR reports. So when an investigator somewhere thinks it's possibly, he doesn't even know for sure, could be related, he must report this to his sponsor. It's a requirement. The sponsor, and I'm talking about commercial sponsors, and I'll get into that in a little bit, they know their drug better than everybody. They are getting reports from all over the world. They are required by regulations to evaluate that event against the same or similar events to say, yeah, this is related or not. Most of the SUSAR reports that you get, they're not going to be, the sponsor is not going to say it's related. When they say it's related, they're usually going to tell you right after that, we're sending in a revised IB, revised protocol, revised informed consent. That's how you'll know. So there's some guidance that I think would be very helpful for some people to look at is reporting adverse events to IRBs by the FDA. I put the source at the bottom. It's very helpful if you read it and it will make more sense. So sometimes something is going to happen to one person, but we don't know yet. And if they say in there, we don't know, we're going to continue to monitor. It's never happened to anyone else. It's not a EUPERSO. Any questions about any of that? FDA regulated research. This means your study is being conducted under an IDE or an IND, investigational new drug application or investigational device exemption. So I'm not going to spend time on this, but this has come up a lot lately. You need to know the difference between a sponsor and a funding source. Two different things from a regulatory perspective. Sponsors are responsible for the reporting to the HRPP, the IRB, the FDA, if you are the sponsor investigator. So please look over these and be clear of how is your PI serving on this study? Are they the sponsor investigator? It is crucial that you know that. So I get reportable events all the time. It says UT Southwestern is the sponsor and Dr. Smith is the PI. No, UT Southwestern is not the sponsor. The PI is the sponsor. I mean, UT Southwestern is like 17,000 of us, so we're all sponsoring a study. Or I've had other ones say, Rhonda and Josh are the sponsors. I've notified them. Rhonda and Josh aren't sponsoring any studies that I know of at this point. Okay. So you have to know who your sponsor is for that study for reporting. The PI has a lot more responsibilities when they're the sponsor investigator. They have to do all the investigator duties and all the sponsor duties. I would never want to do that. I've worked only on the sponsor side for 20 years before I came here. We do everything, and it's a lot. I wouldn't want to be the investigator and do all of that on top of it. These are some of the sponsor investigator responsibilities. It's a lot. I'm not going to read them, okay? Another thing is, say the PI is serving as the sponsor investigator, and something happens, and he says, this is definitely a UPERSO, because I'm the sponsor, I can say that. There's two different types of sponsors and INDs. There's commercial, these are your biotech, pharmaceutical companies, drug manufacturers, and then there's research INDs, which are investigators. Two different things. On the 1571, when you submit your IND, you will check in box 6B, commercial or research, okay? So that's very important because the sponsor determines relatedness. I'll show you the next slide in a minute. But when your PI is only seeing people here at UT Southwestern, they don't have the big picture. FDA recognizes that. So in those cases, especially drug and device study, unless the investigator developed the device, and we have a lot of investigators that do, and so they are the sponsor and they know the device better than anybody, they're talking about the commercial sponsor, Pfizer, things like that. There's another guidance here for clinical investigators, sponsors, and IRBs on adverse event reporting. That would be something to look at. So in here, there's a source down there at the bottom too. You will see when something happens at your site and you're the PI, you have to say, is it serious? Yes or no. You don't have to say it's unexpected because you don't know. You don't know the big picture of everything that the pharmaceutical company knows is going on. So the investigator at the site does not have to give an expectedness assessment. And then the causality is the next one. Investigators have to give what they think. Unrelated, possibly related, definitely related. However, the sponsor, and we're talking about the commercial sponsor at this point, trumps that. I hate to use that word, but they trump it. They'll take into account what the investigator said, but they know more than anything because they have a huge database and they're looking at this all the time. When they get something in, they're going to run queries and look for that term, look for similar terms, okay? The sponsor, commercial sponsor, will determine if this is related. Think about all of your SUSARs, MedWatches reports that's happening to one person, one person, one person. Imagine if you had to update your informed consent every single time that happened. First of all, it's a lot of work, but beyond that, we don't really care about how much work it is. Is it helpful for the subject to know what could possibly happen, what happened to Joe Blow in Italy? It's not. The informed consent is there to provide them with information, crucial information they need to know to make a decision. And once they make that decision, they might want to start looking out for some of these things. I would want to know if I'm going to study that seizure is a risk, so I would know to look for a seizure. I've never had a seizure. I don't know what they're like, but I would want to pay attention. So we're trying to give the subjects meaningful information so they are fully aware. We write informed consents now like they're a legal document so that we can say, aha, you had that. We told you you would have it. Don't sue us. That's not the point of it, but it has gotten to that point. Okay. Did you have a question?
We're constantly from the sponsors getting, when somebody gets, like a partner gets pregnant and there's a birth defect, we're constantly getting from the sponsors, we have to report it because they call it probably related. And we send it to the IRB and it's always withdrawn.
Josh, do you want to talk about that? The pregnant partners and the pregnant subjects, that's changing a little bit in our world, not yet?
No, so pregnant partners and pregnant partners are still research subjects. And so you have to have informed consent. Whether or not the birth defects are related, there really has to be enough data to show that it truly was related. And it sounds like in those reports, may not actually be enough data to prove that. But if the sponsors if the sponsor, in Kelly's terminology here, is saying that it is related, then we have to go to, is it unexpected and is it serious? and then it may be person.
The sponsors are going to tell you to submit everything. That's what I did when I was on the sponsors. Submit it to the IRB, submit it to the IRB. You know what your answer is? It doesn't meet UPERSO criteria, so I'm not going to submit it now, but I'm going to submit it at continuing review. That's your answer. It's very simple. Are there any questions about this? The sponsor determines relatedness. You don't want to update your informed consent every time you get a MedWatch or SUSAR. It's not helpful to the subjects. Okay. So these are questions of like, where do I find where the sponsor or company has their relatedness? It's at the end of the report. You're going to look for terms like company, sponsor, case comment, and they'll tell you. When they say things, possible attribution cannot be completely excluded. The company agrees, however, this person also had confounding factors. It's not a UPERSO. They're looking for other reasons, and they're usually legitimate, why this subject experienced this serious adverse event. You only would submit it if it's probably or definitely related according to the sponsor, and the sponsor is going to be the one sending you the SUSAR's MedWatches. You can read these later. I'm not going to read them now. Okay, any other questions about any of those? Briefly going to talk about what if you rely on a non-UT Southwestern IRB, because this is going to start to happen much more frequently, and it's going to make things even more complicated because you're still going to have to report things to UT Southwestern HRPP, and you're going to have to report things to your relying IRB, and sometimes they're the same information with different timelines. So if your study is under an external IRB, and you get a SUSAR report of something happening to someone in India, that's an external event. You will not report that to us. If your subject has an event and it meets the 3 criteria, you will report it to the HRPP because we need to know what's happening with our subjects here at UT Southwestern. We still owe them the protection and make sure we're doing the right thing. So remember, the IRB and the HRPP are 2 different things. If you have emergency deviations, major deviations, or UPERSOs, you have to report them to your external IRB according to their requirements. Report it to us again within 5 days to the HRPP, and then once you get your response back from that IRB, you need to submit that back to us within 10 days. We have to see what that IRB says. What if they say your corrective actions that you proposed are not appropriate, and we have had that? What if they say this is serious noncompliance? We have had that. We have a different mechanism that we have to use. We have to go to the institutional official and bring these outside IRB events to him, and he has to evaluate and determine, yeah, it's serious noncompliance. Yes, it's a UPERSO, and we have to report that as an institution. We have reporting requirements. So even though it's under another IRB, think of them as subjects here, and this happened to this subject here, okay? How do we assess events? So I get this question a lot. I have 2 studies with drug XYZ. I just got a SUSAR, and it's a UPERSO on study A. Do I need to report it to study B? Not very rarely. I'm just going to say no. No, because there's something maybe different about that other study. It could be children. They could be using double the dose. It could be very sick people. It could be a totally different population. If something has happened to drug XYZ, that sponsor is going to notify everybody at or right around the same time. So if you see something that's really concerning, you know it's a UPERSO, call your monitor, call your sponsor and say, hey, are you going to be submitting it to this other study? Do I need to look out for this? Just ask them. If you get a notification that study drug has been contaminated, and you have study drug here, that's something you're probably going to want to call the office about and ask. That would be something that we would want to look at, even though they're only reporting it in 1 study. But that's rare. I don't think that'll ever happen. Subject noncompliance. The subject refused to stay for their full chemotherapy treatment. They have that right. You can't block the entrance of the door and tell them they can't leave. They have that right. You can't control what they do. You can't control if they go on vacation or they refuse to call you back or come in. You can't control that. When you're reporting non-compliance, it's about the investigator and the team. Subjects are not held to the protocol. The protocol says subject, you should have done, no, the investigator, the study team is held to the protocol. The only time you would report subject noncompliance is if it results in a UPERSO. So I used to work a lot in HIV studies, and if subjects would not take their medication exactly when they were supposed to, regular basis, not only would they get resistance to that drug, they could get resistance to the whole class of drugs. That might be a UPERSO. Okay, things like that. But for the most part, you cannot control subjects. The noncompliance isn't your fault. It's their doing, but when you report it, you would report it as a UPERSO. The subject's noncompliance resulted in this, and it's a UPERSO, and this is why. It's going to be very rare, very rare. Okay, so if the sponsor stops the study because they say the cost to develop the drug or outweigh its sale, UPERSO? No, okay. If they stop the study early because they say the placebo group and the drug group, they're not even doing any better, that's futility, no. If they stop the study early because the interim analysis shows the people in the active drug group have significantly more severe or frequent adverse events and we're going to halt the study, there you go, that's your UPERSO. If you send an x-ray or a case report form or something to your sponsor, secure mail, and you have an identifier on there, subject's name, their date of birth, things like that, people always want to report that. First of all, if you look in your HIPAA and you look in your consent, sponsors have access to that information. They could come here and look at all their medical records and stuff anyway. When you get sent something by accident, you're not going to remember date of birth, 1/24/17. You know, it's like you're not going to remember that. And even the breach and PHI policies talk about that. If it's things that you could immediately delete, you're not going to remember. You're not going to use it. It's not really a breach and doesn't need to be reported. If you want to report it at continuing review, have at it, but it's not something you need to report. The sponsor has legitimate access to subject information, names, dates of birth, medical history, all of that. Now, if the PI or the study coordinator mails your syphilis report to your home and it's positive and your nosy next door neighbor gets it and opens it and tells everybody, there you go, that's a UPERSO. Because you don't have to be physically harmed, you could be psychologically harmed, you could be socially harmed, your spouse could be harmed from that information, they may not even know. Think about all of those things. So it doesn't just have to be physical harms that come to the subject. So when you submit information or give information to unauthorized people, that's when it's a UPERSO. Okay, so sometimes they'll call and say, hey, our subject got diagnosed with skin cancer. So Mr. Orange here got diagnosed with skin cancer 50 weeks into the study. Okay, what kind of study is it? Is it you're x-raying people every single day? Maybe, but if this person is like me and tanning beds for 45 years of their life, I have a risk of skin cancer. Okay, so you need to know, what is the study about? If it's a questionnaire study, you know they didn't get it from the study. You have to look at it. Then you have to look at their medical history and do they have risk factors? You can always look at the IB, informed consent, ask your PI, call your sponsor, or monitor. So I get this one a lot too. If you enroll over your enrollment, so you'll call, oh, we enrolled 3 additional people. Is it a RE? Most of the time it's not. However, if it's FDA regulated, it's first in humans, and the FDA said 3 people can get this drug, and we have to do analysis and blah, 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 and you enroll 4, it's probably a UPERSO. We need to know that so that we could then report it to FDA. So most of the time, over-enrolling, especially if it's a chart review, is not a reportable event. So now there's even, you could put 9999 in there for chart reviews and even some competitive enrollment studies. So usually that's not a big deal, but if you know you have a drug, device, procedure that is extremely risky, and FDA or someone else has told you can only enroll this number of people and you go over, that's reportable. There's been a study where someone did a study on 2 specific individuals, their names. But then we found out they didn't do anything to those people but another person. that's reportable, okay? Because the IRB thought you were enrolling Kelly Benton and Scott St. Martin, and yet you enrolled Kim Mapes. Well, Kim Mapes is different than us. We need to know that. Why did you change? So think about those kind of things. So completing the reportable event SMART form, basically, what do we need to know? What happened? What went wrong? What's the right way? Why or how did it happen? Did it affect the subject's rights, safety, or welfare? Did it affect the data or the science? And what is your CAPA plan, your corrective and preventive action plan? That's what needs to be in the reportable event. So in section 1, never check other. Never, ever, never, ever check other. It is very difficult to get the programmers to program things into EIRB. So we have that just in case something comes up. We don't have to get it reprogrammed. We can just say, okay, put that in other. And there's another reason that you don't need to know about. But you'll never, ever check other unless we tell you to. Never. So make sure the category is correct in 1.0. You'll see at the top we have single subject exception and short forms. Those are not reportable events. Those are modifications that we have allowed to go through the reportable event process, because sometimes you may have a mod in or a CR in and you can't do another mod, so you need to come this way. Sometimes you have a subject shows up and they speak Vietnamese and you don't have a short form to enroll them and they are dying of cancer. We want those people to get in. So Rhonda created this mechanism to have things move very quickly. We get how many mods a month, Josh? 700. 700. So you can imagine there's a lot to weed through. EIRB is not user-friendly. I'm in those reportable events all day, every day. I dream about reportable events. When something pops up, I see it. So that's not really a reportable event. That's not why I'm talking about that today. But the next one, departure from protocol, remember anything deviation, noncompliance, UPERSOs, emergency deviation, and complaints. That is if it affected the right safety welfare of subjects, not because they hate the parking and the paying for parking at UT Southwestern. It's, I wanted to end this study and the PI told me I better not, that he won't treat me anymore. That's different, okay? If you submit something and it only fits the other category, it's probably not a reportable event. That's one way to know and find out. Because think about it, when we acknowledge your events, what do we say? We've acknowledged it as noncompliance, serious or continuing or not. We've acknowledged it as an external UPERSO. We're never going to say, we've acknowledged your event as other. That doesn't even make any sense. We're acknowledging your event as something that happened that's reportable. In 3.0, put the date that the event occurred. So if you were notified on January the 10th in a Dear Investigator letter, and they don't have when the event happened, it's January the 10th. When did you find out about it? You might not have found out about it until January the 25th because the sponsor didn't send it to you until then. That would be number 4. That's when you found out. So now people are gaming the system where they'll look and see where, okay, I'm submitting it today and I count back 5 days. We look at that. We change those dates. So don't do that. So either way, you can get one of two things. You submitted it late, which is almost never a big deal, almost never. Or you can say, the PI didn't find out about it for 6 months. That's a big deal. Now, where's PI oversight? They're going to question that. So you can't game the system there. It's better just to be reported 5 days later than to say the PI had no idea what was going on with their subjects for 6 to 8 months. You don't want that, okay? In section 7, people list 238. No, we want to know the subject numbers of the subjects that were affected. Sometimes we have 100, 200 subjects that were affected, in particular from a deviation. You can put that in section 19.2 and list out all their subject IDs. Number 8 is where you put how many have been enrolled. At UT Southwestern, enrolled means they have signed informed consent. Every person who has signed informed consent here at UT Southwestern is considered enrolled, whether they screen fail or whatever. Keep that in mind. And the current status of the study, so sometimes I get this, subjects are on treatment at our site, and then the next one will say, no subjects are on treatment at our site. You can't have both. Sometimes they get subjects are on treatment at our site, and it'll say subjects are in follow-up, but none are on active treatment. Look at all the choices before you submit it, because it's very confusing. Like, well, which one is it? We need to know the accurate status of the study. Section 10, you should briefly and succinctly explain what went wrong and what should have happened. Here are some examples. The subject 123 was enrolled with an ALT of 350 when ALT over 250 is exclusionary. That's it. The PI changed the subject's medical care and drugs so that they would qualify for her study in a few weeks. It has happened. That's what you need to say. Subjects were enrolled in the study before IRB approval. That's what you need to say. So you're just saying what happened. I get these long paragraphs of why, what happened. And the next one is why or how did it happen, okay? So that's the part where you're going to put in the root cause. Everybody asks me, what's a root cause? It's the reason why something happened. So they'll mostly put the study coordinator forgot to draw blood. That's not the root cause. Why did the study coordinator forget to draw blood? That's your answer to the root cause, because people are going to forget. What's a good corrective action plan? I'll do better next time? Not really. How about you get a checklist and you use the checklist? Things like that. Okay, so you need to know why something happened so that you know how to fix it and it doesn't happen again. That's the whole purpose of this. We're trying to prevent things from happening again. Things are going to happen. We know that. They just do. Let's try to stop them in their tracks. 12.0, if a subject goes to the hospital or has an adverse event, they were actually affected. I've had people say the subject was hospitalized, blah, blah, blah. Were they actually experienced an event? No. If they've gone to the hospital, if they've gotten sick, if something has happened, check that box, yes. When it says safety, rights, or welfare, the answer would be the subject wasn't consented prior to performing research procedures, or the subject was treated for 6 weeks and they were never eligible, so they had to be withdrawn. Things like that. If no actual harm occurred, then you can put what would have occurred. The subject could have experienced reversible injury, liver, something like that. What could have happened, reasonably could have happened. Again, 13 is the primary endpoint now unable to be realized? This is subject's entire case history have to be thrown out. That's what we're looking for there. And then if your study is externally sponsored, you must notify the sponsor. I have had investigators call me and like, why does the sponsor need to know? The sponsor is paying you a lot of money, providing the drug. They have reporting responsibilities. You must tell them what you've done. So you have to if it's externally sponsored. If you say no to this, there's going to be some choices that pop up that the PI is the sponsor investigator. That makes sense. Or the information originated from the sponsor. So those are okay. And we need to know what the sponsor said. If the sponsor said, we want y'all to halt enrollment, we want to shut y'all down, we think this CAPA is good, whatever it is that they say, we need to know what the sponsor says. We're all working together to come up with a corrective and preventive action plan. The team, the sponsor, the HRPP, we're all working together to make sure something doesn't happen again, and we have to get input from these people. Who else has been notified? Make sure you check all. A lot of people will check this non-UT Southwestern IRB when it's not under an external IRB, and that's always very confusing. Make sure that section is correct, and then tell us what they said. I notified the privacy officer, Joan, at Children's, but I haven't heard back from her yet. That's acceptable, and we'll wait until you do hear back from her. This is another area, what has been done to correct the problems. We put in all of these boxes that are the most common, yet people will not check items here and describe it below, or vice versa. Sometimes they'll check and say, the informed consent is going to be modified, describe below. And then below it'll say, the informed consent is not going to be modified because the study's about to end. Well, why did you say it was going to be modified? Just make sure they're consistent and you're checking off what is accurate. The CAPA plan, corrective actions are those that you're trying to do to correct something that's already happened. Sometimes that's not possible. If you had a new informed consent with a new risk and you forgot to notify your subject today and they go home and you call them and say, hey, I forgot to get you to tell you about this risk and signing your consent, but I wanted to let you know, you just document that in your chart. That's how you're correcting that event. And the next time they come in, you'll reconsent them to the new consent. Preventive are things you're going to do to prevent that event from happening again. I'm going to have a checklist. I'm going to put a reminder on my calendar, whatever it is to help you remember. Any questions so far? I know I talk fast and it's a lot of information. So these are just some summaries of what we talked about, tips, reminders. Please do not send us emails and say, read the attached reports, Kelly, and tell me, is this a UPERSO? Nobody's got the time for that, first of all. I have never seen your study a day in my life. Why would I know more than you would know? Okay? So please don't do that. You have to read and understand what that safety report, Dear Investigator letter, whatever is saying. You compare it to your informed consent, your IB, your protocol. You run it through the UPERSO decision tree, okay? You do all of those things. Then if you have questions and say, Kelly, I took it through the UPERSO tree, but I'm really not sure, does it suggest an increased risk of harm to subjects than was previously known? That's a different question. But just to say, read all these reports and tell me if they're UPERSOs. We can't do that. We don't have time. We're not the expert. There's thousands and thousands of studies here. You know your study a lot better than we do. You're the person that needs to make that determination whether it's a possible UPERSO. Again, when you submit noncompliance in UPERSOs, noncompliance are allegations. They have not been proven yet. UPERSOs are possible. It appears to me that these 3 criteria were met. Only we can say in our office it's not a UPERSO and it's not serious noncompliance. But only the IRB can make the determination that it is a UPERSO, that it is serious noncompliance or it is continuing noncompliance. The study teams cannot make that. So recently, I was back and forth with somebody about why this event was not a UPERSO, and it took a long time. In the meantime, they submitted a mod and said in the mod, this is a UPERSO, so we're updating the consent. So now it went to the board, it's in the meeting minutes, it's in the letter. We have to redo that now because the board did not say that was a UPERSO. It wasn't a UPERSO. So think about those things. There's ramifications. There's reporting requirements if it's a UPERSO. If we were to be audited or you were to be audited and they say, this is a UPERSO, where's the UPERSO letter? When did the IRB review this? Oh, they didn't. That's not good for you. If they come to us and say, why did they say it's a UPERSO and not? I've got it documented. I have an email. I have the RE that I withdrew. So we're covered. But remember, the IRB makes those determinations, not the PI, not the study coordinator, not me. I can't even say it's serious. I can say it looks serious. I don't really even know, but I got to take it to the IRB and they're going to tell me. Okay, again, sometimes we'll get emails like, Kelly, read all these emails below and tell me is it a RE. Okay, no, that's not going to happen either. We cannot do that. You need to look at it and say, this event happened. Based on that, does it meet the criteria as a reportable event? If you don't know, then you do a summary and say, I'm not sure if this is a major deviation that needs to be reported because. That's different than saying, read all the 30 emails below and attached and reports, and you tell me whether it's RE. We can't do that. We need you to look at that, and we are glad to help you after you have done the work. Okay? Again, if you're going to check other, it's probably not a reportable event. UPERSOs must meet all 3 criteria. If it meets 1, if it meets 2, it's not a UPERSO. If there's no corrective actions, it's not a UPERSO. So relevance. In your reportable event, please attach the SUSAR reports. Please attach the Dear Investigator letters. If you say we're going to tell subjects, we're going to send them a letter and say this, attach the letter. The IRB has to approve your letter. You can't just send letters out to subjects. Think about that's kind of risky. We have to word things a certain way. They have to approve that. When you send us any information that we ask for, be sure to redact it and only include subject ID numbers. Please respond to our queries timely. You know you have your 5 days, but the response is also taken into account when we go to the IRB. We tell them, look, it took me 3 months to get this done. It took me 1 year to get this done. They take that into an account. They look then and say, Dr. Smith, I've seen 7 reportable events from you and you're trying to open up a new study. Do you really have time? Do you really have the resources? So there are other things that you need to consider and report. So major and emergency deviations in UPERSOs are reported within 5 days via the reportable event form. Minor deviations and AEs and SAEs that do not meet UPERSO criteria are reported in summary form at continuing review. Any questions? Resources, we have a lot of them. We have our web page, it's going to be new, so if you look at the bottom, the UPERSO decision tree will be there. I've done like several pages of RE facts, and self-assessment checklists will be added when our new website goes live. You always have this chart to look at. We look at it, our team looks at that every day. Does it really meet this criteria? Does it meet this? What is it? The UPERSO decision tree, you take any event that happens and you just run it through this tree. And it'll tell you if and when you should report an event. We have tracking logs on the website. You can use them. You can modify them for your use. You don't even have to use them, but we created them to help you. Again, the whole team is here. There's 4 of us. You can contact any of us if you have reportable event questions after you have done the work and you're still not sure. Any specific questions? Yes.
When an RE is acknowledged, does it mean, I mean, it's kind of matter of fact, but so every part of it is approved, like the letter, the corrective action plan, all that was included?
It's done. Once you receive that acknowledgement letter, your RE is done. If you get we've accepted it with stipulations, then there's more things that you need to do. When you meet those stipulations, we'll send you an acknowledgement letter that you met the stipulations. But once it's acknowledged, you're done with that one.
And there's no date or limit time to apply the corrective action plan?
There is.
There is?
Yes. So we had that recently where a PI said, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and we found out 1 year later they didn't do it. That's serious noncompliance. So we're going to look for things like that. We're going to follow up on things. So you can't just say, I'm going to do this and never do it. Then that's another issue of noncompliance.
So you have to document that
Yes.
part
Yes.
for the next CR, if not before, correct?
Right, right. And usually we'll say, when are you going to retrain? When are you going to implement this? You know, and sometimes they have to hire a new person. That's happened. Well, we know that's going to take 20 years, so we know that that's going to be an issue, you know, so it just depends on what your corrective actions are. But normally, if you're going to submit a reportable event or do this, that, or the other, we're going to ask for it. We're going to look for the RE. We're going to look for the mod to make sure you submitted it, not created it. Before we close that out, we're going to make sure that the steps that we can ensure have been taken. And then we also do monitoring. So we come out to people's sites all the time and do routine monitoring, and we'll look for those things. Any other questions? This means no one in this room can email me and ask me any questions via email if you have nothing to ask me now. Is that fair? Good trade-off? It's hard for me to stand up here and talk. It's not hard for you to ask a question, because I promise if you have the question, so does everybody else. I have template language that I get an email, cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste every day. Yes?
If you have an external IRB and you submitted all of your information for a deviation to him, however, I was not aware that I needed to do that at the same time. Should we still submit it to UT IRB?
The HRPP. So you've submitted the event to your IRB, and it was local. It happened here?
No.
Okay, no, I don't even know about
Oh,
it.
no. It did happen here. The patient is here.
Okay,
So we have an external IRB,
right.
but it wasn't submitted to HRPP.
Okay, if it's an external UPRSO that may affect the subject, no. If it was an internal UPRSO, you do need to report it. If it's major deviation or major noncompliance, you do need to report it to us. If it's an emergency deviation, those are the things you need to report. Come on, people, you should have brought your SUSARs and your med watches and ask me now, what does this mean? What is the sponsor trying to say? They're trying to say it's not related and they don't want to make it true. Thank you.